This episode of One More Thing Before I Go is sponsored by Anchor.fm. When I first had the idea of making the show, my primary obstacle was deciding which platform to use for my recording, hosting, and distribution. Anchor made it so easy because they do all three things and much, much more. It's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast, whether you have 2 listeners or 2,000. It's everything you need to make a podcast, all in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Hello again, friends. As I've begun the process of sitting down with people I meet and allowing them to share their stories with me, I'm not at all surprised by the fact that they all have something of value for us to hear. But what has been surprising is just how much they have to say. Far too much, in fact, to fit into a single podcast episode. And so we let the recording devices roll and capture more, and from time to time, I'll be able to give you little bonus episodes we're calling And Another Thing. Because sometimes just one thing isn't enough. These episodes may not be of interest to everyone, but I hope to have enough variety to either let each of you dig in deep with something close to your heart, or perhaps pique your interest with something you didn't even realize you'd enjoy. Either way, here's this week's And Another Thing. Big Fish Music, that's Ross Fengfish. He's been a guest here before, and I wanted to give them the opportunity to walk people through maybe the creative process of writing a song, and maybe specifically what he put into creating the songs that you've been hearing so far on this podcast. So welcome back, Ross.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was fun. I really appreciate you asking me to kind of help out with the music for the podcast, and that's always been kind of where I wanted to spend a lot of my time is in creating music for different things. Studio musician work has always been a dream job of mine, and so getting little projects like that are really fun. So I was excited to put together music for this. But yeah, Big Fish is, I'm not even sure it's really official, but it's kind of what I've landed on. I'm big, and my last name is Fengfish, so Big Fish it is. And I think a handful of people call me Fish or Big Fish. So yeah, Big Fish music it is. Yeah, this song in general was fun. I think we talked about maybe divulging a little bit of the insight into this one, but we won't be sharing the audio from it. But yeah, the inspiration for this song that you have been using in your intros and in the background of a lot of the different audio. It came to me while I was on the how do you say, the porcelain throne, if you will. It just dawned on me, and I keep my phone around, I think, as most people do, and I have one of those voice recorders on my phone. So at any point in time that I think of a melody or I think of some interesting idea, I hum it out. I'm not really a great singer, if you will. That's not really my claim to fame or anything like that. But I try to hum out whatever I can and try to get the basic idea so I don't forget it. I know for me in the creative process, I have a million ideas musically constantly, and I can't stand the idea of that just, dissolving and never really being able to figure out if it was actually worth, doing or not. I still want to try it out and see if it even didn't work. So, yeah.
So having that recorder is helpful. I know there's sometimes where I'm driving in the car and a line pops in my head, and I don't even know whether it's a unique thing or whether I need to try to figure out what song is that from. But yeah, by the time I get home or get to my destination and I actually have a chance to do something with it, it's gone. I've lost it.
Right.
So yeah, having that voice recorder is helpful just to get the basic idea. And yeah, I do have evidence. There is a 10-second clip where there's a really good reverb in that room.
Yeah. Yes, it is in the bathroom. Yep. So, I mean, it is what it is. Inspiration comes at any point, and we need to be prepared to capture that moment. And I really like to be able to see it through and see if it's an idea worth kind of going on with. So yeah, it was fun to write. It was. It honestly did not take very long.
And you had started with a little different idea, and sent that to me. And I said, it's like a little more syncopation, like it to be a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And you weren't sure what to do with it. And you said, actually, I've got this thing I completely forgot about, and I have this recording. Let me see if I can do something with that.
Yeah, I went with that because the audio that I went with after, and realizing I had hummed out that tune a couple of days before. And it was just because I know there's some subtleties in the song. It's nothing overly complicated. It's a fun tune, and I don't know. I've always been known as a person who really likes a good walk up or a good walk down in chords. So yeah, I did a little bit of a walk up on that one. But also kind of the other fun thing to it, which unless you're really listening for it, you might not even notice, is that it's an odd meter. So it's not really in anything straight. It's not in what we would call a 4/4 timing. It's not in a straight 4. It's actually in 7/8 timing. So it's one of those things where to the average listener seems fine unless you are bobbing your head to it. And then at that point, it wouldn't seem fun anymore.
Even bobbing your head isn't too bad, but if you're trying to step like left and right, you're going to get thrown off pretty quick. Yeah,
it's going to alternate quite a bit. So whereas most of the world of pop music and pop music listeners and people who listen to the radio on a regular basis, who are pretty much inundated with Bieber and some other, Taylor Swift, they are listening to the straightest, most regular, most anticipated, it is the standard
4 chords and maybe something extra on the bridge. And
4 chords, and then that's pretty much it. And the basic verse, chorus, bridge, chorus setup. Sometimes not even bridges. It's pretty common still in pop music, but I think it's faded away. They're trying to do some different things. But generally speaking, you want to be in your car driving and be able to bob your head to the beat or tap on your steering wheel, and it needs to make sense to your subconscious, really.
And there's something about the repetitiveness, and at least in my mind, the way that all pop songs sound pretty much the same, that's really what they want. When a new song comes on the radio, you don't want people to change the station because you don't recognize it. The idea is to draw people in and say, I think I know this one, even though it's a brand new thing. And by the time they get through the end, they really do know it because it's the same as half the other songs out there.
Right.
So commercially, it makes sense. But in terms of artistry, it leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, it has come to the point where pop music is about there's a general beat, and then there is a melody line, and it's funny to me because to me now songs have been written. I think they always were kind of this way, but I mean, if you go back to even just super old with Gregorian chants or hymns, you're looking at something where the entirety of that song it's like it's one whole song. Whereas now any pop song, I mean, the verse is almost forgettable. It's not even, it's just a means to an end.
Sure.
It's a road to the chorus, and we're just trying to get to the chorus. And we almost all could just be fine listening to pop choruses all day long because that's really all anybody, that's the most significant part of the song, and it is the pinnacle of the song. And it's really honestly what was written first from either the producer or the other songwriters or whatever. They have a concept in mind, and they know what that concept needs to be. You really can't write a verse if you have no idea. It's like building a driveway without, you haven't even put a house down yet. So they're not laying driveway. They're building houses, and they're being like, okay, how do we get the driveway to this house, kind of situation. So,
because ultimately they want people to get their cars into that particular garage.
Right.
That's the ultimate destination.
Yeah.
We want people to arrive here and feel like they're home.
I mean, you could see that majorly evident in like EDM music, where you've got just like this, it's all about the drop. It's all about the, this crash moment of the bing, bang, boom. And then, this beat hits and everything, which I also like. I like the idea of it. It's funny because on one hand, I can't stand being able to anticipate that stuff. Musically, I don't like that things can be so anticipated. Or how do I say it? I usually say a different word for that, but it's not cliche, but it's like so obvious, like that's not even worth listening to for me.
Yeah.
And I'm peculiar, I know, but I like to really think when I listen to music. I want music to make me have to like really concentrate on what's going on. And I have playlists that are not for thinking or concentrating on.
I've heard your workout playlist before.
Yeah. So listen, I mean, I got, my workout playlist is, it's private. It's not going public. And,
only ever for workouts.
It's only ever for workouts. Or drag, like, or racing people in some fast car and just being a hothead. But I grew up, I mean, I listen to or have listened to pretty much every genre that exists. And I appreciate all of them with the exception, and I mean this seriously, with the exception of country music, which is...
No, I'm with you on that. Yeah.
which is terrible. So...
It's so frustrating because admittedly some of the best studio musicians in the world ever are
incredible
country musicians, but you're never going to know their name.
No.
They walk in, you can drop some sheet music in front of them. They'll play it flawlessly. They'll give you a few different takes and they'll walk out the door. But yeah, there's something about when you have to create a twang for your voice and it has to have a particular formulaic style, and it's about drinking or marriage or divorce or car breaking down or you're my truck, and everything about it is formulaic, and there's something to it because again that's commercial and they know it sells.
Yeah, it's the country music that you can handle. The country music you can't handle, you're not listening to because it's old and it's raw and it's just a totally different thing. It's not what we hear. What we hear is what basically Taylor Swift did to country music, which was she came in as a quote unquote country singer and said, "Hey, look, this is how blurry the line is between country music and pop music. It's pretty much the same thing. You just got to go, you have to have a hee-haw to your voice, and and then it's pretty much country music."
Which is why we now have Old Town Road.
Right. So I know for me, that's why I know personally, I get very caught up in, I don't take words lightly. I don't think words in songs should just be whatever you want them to be just to get something to sell. That comes from me as a songwriter and writing a lot of songs. I've probably written a couple hundred songs at this point. And I don't just write words and then just be like, oh, that works. One of the biggest pet peeves for me in songwriting is knowing that they used a word for this sentence just so the next sentence will rhyme with that word. I cannot stand the idea that you can't think of any other way to write what you want to write or express the feelings you have without using moon, because I forget what there's a pop song that talks about bright as the moon or something. Oh, what's that one? There's a pop song about between my arms or something like that. And it makes no sense the way that it's written. You can't hug the person the way that it's being described, but they have to say, they have to say whatever that last word is the way they said it, even though it makes no sense, just so the next sentence can match up.
And they can either come off as super trite at that point, or you have the opposite of like what Tom York has been questioned about, which is, hey, how do you come up with such deep innovative lyrics, and where's the source of that, and what are some of these songs mean. And he's, in later years come out and said, look, half of this was me kind of, it rhymed. I didn't want it to make sense. It wasn't supposed to make sense. It rhymed, and you guys are still asking me about it, so it must have done the trick.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so for me, I tend to go towards instrumental music. I just spend a lot of time in that arena of music. And it started off, honestly, growing up in the church, I mean, I started off playing, all I knew was worship music. And I remember right about the time I was playing, so I started playing the piano when I was 12, and then when I was about 14, my dad was the worship pastor of the church we were at, and the pianist that was there stepped down. And for 2 years, I'd basically been sitting on the front pew watching this guy play the piano and just being like, oh, that's amazing how he does what he's doing. And I had just taken all these mental notes. And so I got up there and started playing, and my dad would give me the music like 7 days in advance or 2 weeks in advance sometimes. And this was right about the time that I think it was Integrity Music, the original Hillsong, if you will, the old people Hillsong.
Shout to the Lord.
Yeah, Shout to the Lord. And these songs were just coming into play. And so that was the music that I was used to playing.
You talk about 4-chord songs.
They were.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were for sure. And then this guy that I didn't know much about at the time, named Michael W. Smith, he came, somewhere I heard him on I don't know what it was, but at the time he was getting really big and in the Christian music arena, and he was writing these songs like, Friends and all this. And he was doing things that just made so much sense to my ears with chord progressions and things. And I was just totally in on Michael W. Smith music. But for me, it was just a matter of like, that was my world. And then I had this really weird dark season where I went total Slipknot, Nine Inch Nails, crazy death metal. I have no idea what. I don't even know what happened. But that was during about the high school. Well, that's what happened. Testosterone happened. So it was about that time. But then, yeah, over the last, I'd probably say the last 8 years or so, I've just discovered this whole other world of musicians that take intricate care about every single note they play. And it's amazing to listen to how these songs are orchestrated, and there's not a single word being sung, but man, you can hear so much in these things. It's the thought that goes into it from a musician's standpoint. These are not non-musicians writing songs. These are musicians writing songs for the instruments they're going to be playing. It's very different when you have a person that's writing you a song and they're writing it just like, here's the song for you, so go ahead and sing it.
Here's the primary focus is the lyrics and the melody, and all the other instrumentation is just accompaniment.
Right.
Where, yeah, I know some of the bands that you're talking about, and they take meticulous care of every single instrumental part having a key component to whatever it is they're putting together.
I mean, they'll be interviewed and they'll literally be asked the question, so why was it that you chose that C9 sharp 13? Because it's really interesting the way, and I get that there's a level to this that people just go, gag me, that's disgusting, I don't want to hear this. But I find it fascinating because it's musicians kind of like, it's these amazing musicians that don't make it on the radio, never will, but have such a massive following that nobody knows anything about. I mean, they will sell out arenas and you have never even heard of them. It's because they have such a loyal following from people who truly like, there's just a different level. There's people that like wine, and there's people that know everything about wine. I mean, there's there's people that make their own wine, and there's like these different levels for sure. And I don't judge anybody. I mean, I understand that it's like a lot of people are just totally fine with, radio hits, and it's a good place for them to be. And in their world, whoever the biggest artist right now, and I got to be honest with you, I am totally out of touch on whoever is singing right now. I have no idea, because I seriously do not listen to the radio at all. So thankful for things like the like the streaming services we have now that can not only share with you music, like you can find the music you want to find, but then they start
giving you suggestions on if you like this.
Yeah. And you just discover and discover and discover. And I truly, really, really like the idea of being able to discover music off of things that already interest you. So
I really miss, and I wish I could find it. I've searched multiple times. Back in the day when they originally did the Music Genome Project, were you familiar with that? That was the original concept behind Pandora.
Right.
That kickstarted that, and why I really liked Pandora when it first came out, because it was pulling. It wasn't, this is a male vocalist that sings pop songs, you're also going to like this other, but it was this band tends to focus on melodic chord progressions or dark undertones, and it had a lot of those things. But I remember seeing this really cool interactive, almost like the way Google Maps works, where you could zoom out and see very, specific genre type stuff. And the more you zoomed in on it, you could focus on different artists. And then it was like a spider web type of mapping, that the closer a person was to the individual that you were looking at, the more similarities they shared on this Music Genome Project. You really were kind of looking at the DNA of the artist. It was amazing and so interactive. And I stumbled across in high school when I found it, so many new artists that I had no knowledge of, and really kind of drove me through a lot of the high school. It doesn't exist as far as I know. It's almost like they realized what a cool thing they had, and they pulled it so it wasn't available anymore, so they could use it for their marketing or whatever it was. But that would be amazing to still have at this point, I think.
Yeah, that would be very cool. I mean, I think we're pretty much predominantly, a lot of people I know use Spotify and iTunes. Those are pretty much the big players. I know Amazon Music also, they all have a feature now where you can see other suggestions or whatever. I know Spotify specifically does. If you like this artist, you might also like these artists, and you kind of click on that, and then it's just this scrolling and scrolling and scrolling of people that you have, and you just discover and discover, and it's pretty amazing. So yeah.
That's one of my favorite features of theirs, is the one, at least for me, it's called Discover Weekly. And based on the things that you've listened to, we've curated an entire playlist that we think you also would enjoy. Yeah.
We're just in such a different era now where where as an artist, you have a lot to offer, a lot to share. I just feel like really the radio is doing such a massive disservice. It's not really to any fault of their own, but I mean, they can only play so many songs, and there's a lot going on in the background as to why those songs need to be played. But I mean, to have the award shows that we have, and to see the people that go up there and get those awards and know that, like, what? You're the best singer? No. I mean, listen, Mariah Carey's voice is incredible, but do you know how many other Mariah Careys there are? I mean, do you know, it's like, just to think, how did we single out this one person and be like, they are the supreme of all singers or whatever?
Yeah. Well, when the Grammys are built around total number of radio plays, and the stations are pushing particular artists and particular songs.
Yeah.
That's how you get Song of the Year, Artist of the Year, because that's what the stations are playing.
I mean, I already am a person that says, oh, you're all going that direction, I'll go a different direction. So I think that also just kind of, that helps in the idea of, I don't really want to listen to the radio because that's what everybody's doing. I'd rather go find something that nobody's ever heard of before. That's really more fascinating to me, and it's kind of like my own little discovery that I figured out, and I like to know about it. And I like when I find an artist that's got 3 monthly listeners, and they're like amazing, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, dude, I can't wait till more people hear about this person, and what they're doing.
And you do a decent job if people follow you on Instagram and Facebook. You do a decent job of coming up with some of your own unique concepts. And then what I like is a lot of times your videos will actually kind of break down, here's how I played the bass line, here's how I played because you do a good job of just building out the full instrumentation on the keyboard, which is pretty unique. We joke about the finger drumming being the most unique thing that nobody's really doing, but you do your own unique originals. You some of these artists that you found, one of the things that you try to do is to highlight them by doing your own cover, an homage to some degree to this group. And so that's really cool. And then some famous, more well-known songs, let's put our own unique spin on it. Let's not do this old tried, 4-chord progression. Let's change up the chords. Let's change up the timing and stuff like that. So if people wanted to see more about what it is that you do and listen to some more of your music, how can they find that?
Yeah, so I am primarily on Instagram currently, with sharing just my music, just my recordings, or what I am doing right now. It's pretty much it's a hodgepodge. It's kind of whatever I come up with or whatever I think of. But yeah, on Instagram, it's at bigfish _music, BIGFISH_music. You can find me there. And I post pretty regularly. I take it more seriously in like the music that I'm actually posting. I do try to add stories where I'm just, fiddling around the piano or adding little things. I offer theory lessons in my stories where I'll do just a little bit of an insight on, how this concept works or how to find a key signature or, some kind of theory like that. But, or chords, I share a lot with chords or a new scale that you can use, a blues scale or a diminished scale or a minor scale. And I kind of teach about how that works. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram, and I have future plans to do a whole line of music education videos on TikTok. I really like its format for being able to kind of do your own kind of like internal production. And I like it's kind of like quick scene to scene kind of action. And I want to make learning music fun. That's always been my passion, but I think there's such easier ways to explain this stuff, and there's a lot of people that are very confused. And so my goal for TikTok for my videos there will be just to have great, short, concise, like here's how this concept works, and you can go back to that video anytime you want to and kind of learn it. So
cool. That sounds helpful not only for the beginner, but also for the advanced learner for whatever it is that they need.
There'll be much there for beginner and advanced players for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, like Ross said, bigfish _music. You can look him up, like his stuff. I'm sure he'll take requests if you have a particular artist that you think he should listen to, maybe try to cover a particular song, or if you have questions at all, I'm sure he'll be happy to answer.
I would love to collaborate anytime. My Bigfish email is bigfishmusic88@gmail.com, and you can email me. I'm very much open to collaborating. I'm just open to connecting with other musicians and helping out where I can, offering some tracks or whatever. Just know that if you hear an original, there's a good possibility I came up with that idea on the toilet. So,
so moral of the story: bring your voice recorders into the bathroom
wherever you go. Yeah, you got it.
All right. Well, thanks again for your time.
Thank you, man.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week. If you like what you heard, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you do your listening. You can even interact with me directly if you go to anchor.fm/One More Thing Podcast. That's the number 1 More Thing Podcast. There you can click on a link to send a voice message. That's a great way to give feedback or let me know if you too would like to be a guest on the show. It's that easy. Special thanks goes out to bigfish _music for providing our theme music and transitions. If you like what you heard, go check him out on Instagram or Facebook. Thanks again for listening to One More Thing Before I Go. Until next time, be good to yourself and be good to others.